People will talk about others all of the time, especially when they first meet them. The funny thing is that they think they know people based on a couple of interactions and a few patterns of behavior they observe from others. And what's worse is that they rarely bother to give a person a second or third chance to make an impression, and hence for them to have a more complete understanding of who they are. For example, when people say that a person is aggressive or has a strong character, as they say in Mexico, people think that that is all there is to that person. However, deep down, that person is only frustrated and in reality feels weak, because if you really think about it, a real aggressive person, truly aggressive in nature and essence, does not appear aggressive. A real aggressive person can be like a CEO who seems calm on the surface, but is really aggressive deep down in more subtle, less seen and less obvious ways. That is why what is apparent or obvious is not really real. In other words, it is false. And there seems to be a tendency for the opposite to be true. What is not so apparent could potentially be the truth. We have to remember that people are multi-layered and complex, and that the truth often hides behind a false or easy truth. So this begs the question, are we the opposite of what we appear to be? Well, it depends. For example, when you first meet a person, your first impression of them is normally accurate. This means that if you sense their aggressive nature or their soft and weak nature, then that is probably accurate. Take a relationship example. When boy meets girl, both of them are usually well behaved, right? That is, they do not show their true self, but they may occasionally let out real parts of themselves here and there. Sometimes you don't even know parts of yourself until you are with someone new. It may appear that you are the opposite of what other people think you are, but it could also be true that you really are the way people think you are. Let's take a person who seems nice on the surface. This person seems soft and may even describe himself as soft. Now, is he really soft? Multiple are the cases where people who seem like they couldn't hurt a fly are actually the most aggressive, resentful, and vengeful, although it may appear that at first, the very first millisecond impression you get on someone before all the niceties is in fact who they really are. It can be said that the immediate impression and the long-term impressions are who that person truly is, but not the short-term impressions. People in Mexico, for example, appear docile and kind in the short term, but underneath that social cultural surface and exterior, there are immovable principles to the extent that reaffirming your essence, individuality, and uniqueness becomes a true battle of the wits with other people. People do not understand the importance of being different or innovative in Mexico, as it is in fact a collective culture more than an individual culture. People in Mexico unconsciously prefer the traditional, boring, and known. Predictable communicative exchanges and behaviors are commonplace. For example, let's say that someone is always late or is being loud, and you get angry and say something about it. You are going to be the one who is in the wrong for getting mad, not the other person that is crossing personal boundaries or affecting others around them in less perceived ways. Plus, they always have a supposed reasonable excuse for their awful behavior. Maybe the best thing to do in these cases would be to try to reason with the other person. Unfortunately, there is a tendency to believe that no one can do harm in Mexico, so it becomes sometimes quite impossible to talk about improving or learning or about doing things differently. People tend to think they do no harm, so when they do harm, they cannot see it. There is very little accountability because it is always someone else's fault or the traffic or a million other reasons. Although it should be argued that your side of things should be known to the other person, that is, you should express it, if not all of your anger and frustration, at least give people some clues that you are frustrated with them in small, less obvious ways. This could be very effective because the Mexican culture is very anxiety prone, so any little irregularity in your behavior is usually taken as a big deal, and that way meaningful changes could occur. In other words, it is not necessary to make a big fuss when the people and the culture will get it with just a little information. Now, this new view of the apparent will also lead us to a reinterpretation of the notions of cause and effect. Nietzsche is one of those brilliant writers and philosophers that says more sometimes in between the lines than explicitly. He will teach you with things, concepts, and ideas he takes for granted. When he talks about the difference between the one who suffers and the one who inflicts the pain, such as with the oppressor and the oppressed, he also states that the cause is not proportionate to the effect and vice versa. That is, people will think that the cause and the effect have the same potential, and we can even take this to the emotional level. Conceptually, Nietzsche also says that the cause can have a different energy content than the effect. For example, if a person experiences something unfair, they may perceive a lot of pain, suffering, anger, etc. And all of this while thinking that the perpetrator did what they did with the same level of intensity, emotion, and thought, when that could in fact actually be completely false. The cause may be on a lower level than the effect, or we can even think about it backwards. The effect may have a lower energy level content than the intended cause energy level. For example, when you get angry and want someone to do something differently, but they do the bare minimum or very little, that is, the effect, the bare minimum, is lower than the cause, your anger and scolding. The apparent connection and apparent first-hand knowledge we have about cause and effect never told us about this idea. The relationship between cause and effect was always known as a relationship of justice, that is, proportionate. Let us question what is apparent more until we get a deeper understanding of it. It may sound optimistic, but it really is in favor of your psychological safety and reassurance. Don't think you know people. That is, even if a person seems evil, don't think that that is all there is to them. And we can ask ourselves, how can this help me? In what way can I use this in real life? Well, you can avoid making mistakes because you think you know things that are actually false. You can avoid making errors in judgment, and you can actually open yourself up to the potentialities that are all around life and inside each and every person. That is not to sound happy-go-lucky, but rather knowledgeable and informed. Also, it may be the case that the way you think about someone, that is, the way you think that person is, could actually be affecting your perception of that person and hence potentially even their own behavior. The psychological credo reads something like this: treat your patient as if they are the person they want to be. That is, if you treat a person as if they cannot be trusted, maybe they will show you why they cannot be trusted. If you treat a person as if they are funny all the time, they may feel the need to be funny then. Your energy and vibe provoke other energy. Cause and effect, right? Although we must keep in mind that it may not always be proportionate. So what you think someone is like is in essence doubtful. That is, you really don't know, so don't act like you do. The notion of cause and effect is also something which we think we have down, and we actually do not. There may be justice in the grand scheme of things, but the instant-to-instant reality is sometimes unfair, as is judging people lazily and simply based on a couple of interactions with them, or even solely on what we heard about them from the grapevine. What is not, once again, helps us to understand what is. We now know that cause and effect are not proportionately equal. We also know now that when you judge a book by its cover, you are usually wrong. What we think we know about the world is not. That is, it's wrong. And in order to understand it better, we must negate that which we think we already know about the world. So we must go deeper. Cause and effect is not proportionate, but rather disproportionate, unbalanced, and messy. It is something we must watch out for, and the ideas we get from judging a book by its cover tend to be false. This forces us to look at people in a clearer way and to observe other types of behavior that they may have. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and explore more on ABSTRACTO. If you stayed until the end of the video, thank you. Next video will be about Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour review.